You are listening to the Mari Makonda Show on Stella Media. It is 11:36 and time for our marriage segment on this Tuesday. Marriage today is not the same as it was even 25 years ago. Most current TV shows and TV programs are about mixed and blended couples and families. Many movies show men and women in lifestyles and roles that would never have been considered the norm in the not so distant past. And agreeing whether or not to have children is another new experience for couples. That is the topic of discussion for today. What to do when you can't decide on whether or not to have children when you are married. Joining me is the director of Phoenix Life Improvement, hypnotherapist, life and relationship coach, Aadila Pretorius. Assalamu alaikum, Aadila.
Walaikum salam. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, all good in yourself?
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for having me.
Alhamdulillah, it's a pleasure. Thank you for joining me. So, first of all, when should couples start talking about having children? Because this is it's something that many couples don't discuss, but should have the conversation. And when the time comes to have it's always like something that is brushed under the carpet.
Mhm. Absolutely. Ideally, I would say even before you get married, if you have identified this is the person that I would like to marry, and in that getting to know each other before you get married, it is a topic that I think it's very important that both couples sort of need to have an idea that yes, I do want children, or no, I don't want children, because
Mm.
once you're married, remember, then it becomes much more difficult to overcome these type of issues. And obviously, if you are in conversation with a person that doesn't want to have children, are you then willing to live like that? How are you going to overcome that? So yes, for me, ideally, I would say before you even get married is to have some form of idea. Who are you with? Get to know the person on that particular aspect. And definitely, once a person is then married and you do, and let's say both do want to have children, I
Mhm.
would also say in the first 2 to 3 years, give it a good couple of years, get to know each other, and also even before you get married, is who are you? How sure are you of who you are, what you want, what your values, and so forth. But keeping to the topic is I would really say, not immediately. A lot of people say just get married, have children when you're young, let the children grow up with you.
Yeah.
But, you know, we need to understand that when two people get married for the first time or they're in a marriage, is get to know that person, because we know that the children, the basis of their security is a secure relationship between mom and dad.
Mm.
So yeah, it's my opinion in that sense.
Yeah, it comes down to the expectations and the reality, and are you willing to compromise as a person and as the partner? And should it be contractual? Should it be written like both parties agree to not have children or to have a certain amount of children? Something that you can always pull up and say, "Hey, look, this is what we both agreed on."
Look, that is entirely up to each individual couple. At the end of the day, we can't really say to people what they can and cannot or should not
Mm.
write down in their agreements. But I think ultimately it is important to beforehand have that knowledge of this person do want children or they don't want children. You need to be clear on that before you get married, because let's say now you're aware that your partner doesn't want to have children, you do end up marrying that person, and now you're starting to backtrack and say, but hold on, my maternal instincts are kicking in and I really would like to have a child, you know so um to have it in contract, people do change their minds,
Yeah.
and especially when it comes to having children. You may not feel like it right now, and but later on you might change your mind, and then it is written on a piece of paper. So I would really say, to leave the field open for to be able to come rather for therapy and then discuss it and overcome those type of difficulties rather than to get embroiled in legal matters and contracts and that type of thing could be an easier route then to overcome, should a party change his or her mind.
Mm-hmm. Right. And when talking about children, having children, when having this conversation, what should it comprise of?
Um, well, I think in the sense of having children or not having children, I think it's got a lot to do with the progeny carrying on the name of of the family. That's one thing you can consider. Then also the economics is how many children can we afford to have.
Mm-hmm.
So all, especially the financial aspect, but also is also to have that faith, because we know as Muslims, we do believe that, Allah Ta'ala says that He will provide. You must
Yeah.
not, do not fear for your the sustenance of the child. You will be able to provide for that child because Allah looks after all of us. But at the end of the day, I think realistically in the world that we live in, we need to also sit down and say, okay, instead of having 4 children, let us see, can we afford 4 children? Not to say children is a complete taboo, we shouldn't have them at all, because look at the day and age we live in. We must still have that faith in Allah Ta'ala, but let us also be reasonable to what we can afford, and like I said, bigger families today for many is much more difficult to sustain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, back in the days, it was easier to sustain 6 children, and now it's much more difficult. You have to look at your situation, and if only one partner is able to afford or have an income or bring in something, then it's going to be much more difficult to have 3, 4 kids. And as the situation with COVID, it hasn't been really easy for anyone this year. All right, what happens when the couple cannot agree on whether or not to have children? Should they go their separate ways? What should happen then?
Ideally, I would recommend that they do come for therapy. They can either come as a couple, and then maybe also have a few individual sessions, so that as a therapist, you also need to understand where does each party come from, really enter their map of the world, really get to an understanding of why that person doesn't want to have a child, and then to communicate that to the partner, and then to see, can we overcome that by then going forward and agreeing not to have a child? Or is it better for us then to decide to go our separate ways? At the end of the day, I think it is a right for people to say, I do want to have a child. I want my progeny to carry on, whether it's for the male or the female for that matter. And I think those rights we do need to take into consideration. And yeah, it's really ideally to come for therapy, because it's a process, and it's a mental process and adaptation for that person. And if they will then at the end agree to that, there's no guarantee. People have the right to choose. So look, divorce is one solution that we can possibly talk about, which is not ideal. I mean, we want to keep our homes and our families together, lives that people have built together. And I know from an Islamic perspective, we can also look at polygamous marriages in that sense. But then again, polygamy must be practiced in the correct manner. In other words, like you asked right in the beginning of the interview, is when a couple gets married, is to be clear that you agree to be, that your husband can marry additional wives or not. And let's say now in our day and age, it was not something that we even thought of at the time that we got married, right? Is then again, like I said, polygamy, in my sense, is a solution where a man, I'm talking only on the man's, let's say, the wife doesn't want to have a child, but the husband does. Again, we need to consider that the wife, for me, for polygamy to be practiced correctly, the wife has to know. You need to consult with her. It is also about her dignity, her pride, her self-esteem, her self-worth. But essentially, as much as it is his right to practice polygamy, her rights of who she is and her, like I said, her dignity, and if she doesn't want to have a child, it both comes into play. So there needs to be a negotiation, there needs to be a compromise, because it can't only be about one party within the relationship. So, and yes, I mean, there's a lot that can be said with polygamous marriages. The financial aspects and that type of thing. But ultimately, it is one form of solution. If a woman then doesn't want to have children, that they can, as a couple, possibly consider that, if it is something that the man even wants to do. Not all men are agreeable to polygamy themselves. But yeah, I think it is much more difficult, if we turn the situation around and the man doesn't want to have children. He needs to also then become conscientious of her rights as a woman, who want to go through motherhood. So yes, it is not a straight answer to say get them divorced. We're talking about relationships and people and emotions and feelings. So there's a lot to work through. And each couple has got their own decision that they will make, their own way they will overcome that, if they do overcome that.
Okay, Aadila, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll continue when we return.
On the show.
As the crisis in Yemen continues, 80% of the population are in desperate need of basic necessities. The Africa Muslims Agency teams are on the ground undertaking emergency relief efforts. Come to the aid of the people of Yemen by donating any amount now towards food, shelter, and medication. Contact AMA now on 011 834 8685. Africa Muslims Agency, inspiring the spirit of giving.
Endurance Boys College ke sekolo sa boarding and day se se ikemego se agilwe meleng wa lephefo wa N1 Polokwane. Re tlhotlheletsa thuto ye tlhwatlhwa ya monagano le maikutlo lefelong la maleba la go akaretša botlhe. Re buša re latela melago ya NCS CAPS curriculum, ra ba ra neela ka madulo a bašimane ba mphato wa botshelela go fitlha ka marematlou, ebile re na le didirišwa tša boarding tša mphato wa botshelela go ba go fitlha ka marematlou. Maikemišetšo a Endurance College ke go fana ka thuto ya boleng jwa maemo a godimo bjo bo tlhotlheletšago botho. Endurance College ke legae la bobedi la polokego le totego. E ngwadišitšwe le lefapha la thuto e le go Umalusi. Tsebo ka botlalo e hwetša nomorong ya 078 452 6264, 078 452 6264. Re hwetša gape go Facebook le Instagram, goba o re romele email go polokwane@endurancecolleges.co.za.
What makes Randery Jewelers the optimum place for your memorable gift? Is it our range of exclusive, high-end, luxurious jewellery? Or is it our master craftsmanship of all your bespoke jewellery needs? We believe it's because at Randery Jewelers, we know just how to make your special moments last forever. Whether it's for a wedding, anniversary, or just a simple gift to show your love, trust Randery Jewelers to make it special. www.randeryjewelers.com. Make your moments last forever with Randery Jewelers, the family name you can trust.
You are listening to Mariam Makwanda live on Salam Media.
Welcome back. You are listening to the Mariam Makwanda Show on Salam Media, and we are talking about deciding whether or not to have children in a marriage with Aadila Pretorius, relationship and life coach. Aadila, shukran for staying on the line. There is a case study which I'd like to bring to your attention, and let's see how we can tackle this one. She says, my husband and I have been together for nearly 4 years and are struggling to decide whether to have another baby. When we met, he had a 3-year-old son, and after a messy custody battle, he got primary custody of his son, my stepson. So she found out that she was pregnant shortly after they started dating, and well, they decided to get married, and it was a whole lot of a whole long story here. But to cut the story short, she says he's decided he doesn't want any more kids because he thinks he's too old. I should mention that I am the primary caregiver to both my stepson and our son, and I am fully aware that I will retain the majority of the late night, early morning diaper changing, child chauffeuring duties that he claims to be dreading due to his age. The last fight about this has put us on the brink of divorce. I truly love him, and there are obviously many other reasons we are married, but in my mind, those reasons would never have developed without the initial agreement to have another baby. I have told him that if he really decides to not have any more children, I think it would be in both of our best interests if I leave, because I don't know that I would ever be able to forgive him for taking this away from me. So she kind of feels that she is being robbed from this opportunity of having another child. And he basically says, well, just get over it.
Mm, mm. You know, again, I would say to you, it's one thing to have the case study just like this, like how you have presented, and to always to interview the client directly or the patient directly. Always you get, of course, a lot more detail. At the end of the day, and it's, again, you have to look at both parties, because as a therapist, you don't want to choose sides. You don't want to say you right and you wrong, and he should or he shouldn't. Because from his perspective, perhaps he is looking from the financial aspect, the extra burden that might be placed on him, etc., etc. And I'm going to refer back to it again to what the Quran has said, that Almighty Allah says that He will. Every child comes with their own rizq, with their own sustenance, and Allah will provide. So we mustn't let our finances hold us back from procreation, from having more children, and look, from the female side, she already has a child, except for the stepchild that we're talking about. But again, it is still her right if she wants to have more children. So again, it would be something that the couple will have to decide. Can we live? Is this a deal breaker for us in our marriage? And or is it worth it to still carry on and stay in the marriage? Because many times, this can just be the outer symptom of something that's much deeper. That's already within the relationship. There might be resentment sitting there for a long period of time. So it all depends also, where is the relationship at? If it's really just about that issue, we can say, okay, look, this is her rights, that is his right. Is it viable? And maybe perhaps, because we cannot control other people, we can have influence over other people, and that is the best thing that you can do. But for that woman, she would have to come to a space and a place of then choosing, do I stay or do I go? Because at the end of the day, it is a marriage. There is an existing home. Is it worth that sacrifice? But at the same time, we can say, to the father, is also to consider his wife's emotions, that she wants to go through that motherhood and raising of a child again. So love and mercy needs to step in between the couple if they want to save the marriage. So it's not a hard and fast answer. Ultimately, the two people will have to decide, can we continue like this? Is this what we want to do? Whether it is to have another child, or then to live without it, or to get a divorce. So it is something that couples decide once they've worked through all the different options, reasons as to why and reasons as to why not. But I think ultimately it is something that it shouldn't be about what I say goes, because both parties have rights, and that needs to be taken into consideration as a bottom line.
Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier, it all comes down to talking about it from the get go, where communication is key, and let each other know what it is that you want out of the relationship. Because, well, if you don't talk about it, then when are you going to talk about it? And you will never know what the other partner wants. And also, the expectations versus reality thing, you can expect it, but yeah, let's be realistic about the situation. It might not happen. And also, I'd like to agree with you when you said that there could be an underlying factor for her to want to consider a divorce. I mean, it's like, let's have children or else I'm leaving. So can there be another way to solve this problem instead of saying I'm leaving? Or there are some people who threaten to leave because they don't get their way. Perhaps there is another situation there that she wants to get her way, or if she doesn't get her way, then she's threatening to leave the relationship.
Ultimately, threats do not work. You put that person either in a fight or a flight mode, and you probably are just going to create more problems, because you cannot force another person to do something if they don't want to do it. If the husband doesn't want to have another child, you must already know he already has 2 children. If we refer back to the case study, one is with her, one is with the previous person, but the financial care mainly falls on his shoulders. And we all know that raising a child, it's a lot of financial implications. It's medical aid, it's school, it's all of the above. But I think the minute that when a person starts threatening, that is when you are really going to start rubbing up the other person in a wrong way without sitting down, having conversations, and seeing if you cannot come up with a better answer or a solution. Because when you threaten another person, every action has an equal and opportune reaction. And I mean, would you then just want him to submit and become submissive, and then have the child, and then, hope that he is going to start loving this child? Or, surely he probably will, but is there then not future resentment that he might sit with, that you forced me to have this child and now I can't afford X, Y, and Z? So again, it's I think the minute we come with threats, that is when we are entering dangerous territory. It's rather talk about it, communicate about it, see if you can influence the other party, and then still, if there's no answers, go and see a therapist, go and talk to somebody that can help you deal and come to perhaps an answer that will suit both of you. If it is that it's pure financial implications, is there not a chance that the mom in future can then also contribute to lighten the financial burdens? But like we always say, is always remember Allah Ta'ala is there, and He says He will sustain us. So yeah, it's there's no hard and fast answer to say they must or they mustn't. But I think when it borders on threatening your partner, I will leave, that is entering dangerous territory, because at the end of the day, that person might just agree and say, okay, fine, then leave. Then you lose your family. So it's for both parties to really think hard about it, and to communicate, how if and talk about the reality. Okay, if we do have the child, how will this work? How will that work? What will be your contribution? And I don't only mean in the monetary sense, I really mean in the time sense, because children also need to spend time with both parents and all these type of things, so there are ways that that you can look at, okay, if we have the child, how are we going to do this? And if you choose not to have the child, how is your partner going to deal with it? So it's a difficult situation to overcome, but yet again, never underestimate the resilience of people, to find that happiness that Allah Ta'ala can bring into a person's life.
Communication is key. Adila, that's all the time that we have, but please share your contact details with our viewers and listeners.
My cell number is 0721 990 432. My email address is Adila, Adila, at Phoenix, PHOENIX life.co.za. And if you want to visit the website, it's www.phoenix-life.co.za.
All right. Shukran so much for your time once again. Have a wonderful day. Assalamu alaikum.
Shukran jazilan. Wa alaikum salam.
That was Aadila Pretorius, life and relationship coach, and also the director of Phoenix Life Improvement and a hypnotherapist, taking us through what to do when you cannot decide whether or not to have children in a marital relationship. If you'd like to know more, contact Aadila at Aadila at phoenix-life.co.za. You can also visit the website www.phoenix-life.co.za. You are listening to the Mariam Mukonda Show on Salam Media, and we will be right back.